immediately. So to update your information, you could just contact the RC and they could actually scan you over all of their immediate information, including any shelter sites. But in so doing, I just want to point out that if it wasn't for organizations like ourselves that do care and have the compassion to step forward to support these private organizations for the compassion and well-being of our global citizens, without this funding, the non-compression garments, for example, are a valuable lifesaver. And it is this funding that helps you perform in a better and more qualified manner. So hands up and accolades for those of us here in our community that are able to see this globally and be able to respond to you. And thank you for being here today.
Thank you. Absolutely. I mean, I can't say how much I appreciate these two comments, because right now we're in, as we all know, a financial crisis. Our funding has been massively slashed, and it's thanks to really incredibly passionate, caring, compassionate citizens, global citizens, that this work is moving forward, because we don't have the funding for it from within our WHO. We don't have that funding. It's coming from the communities and the partnerships. So I very much appreciate those comments.
I mean, I'm not sure if what Pam has scheduled for the rest of this. I mean, I would love to hear about more innovations. I mean, this is one product that you've talked about. Dr. Thomas is staying for lunch. We will have a table with her, so if you're interested in the topic, come sit with us at lunch, and I will be there, and I'd love to hear more. I'm not sure if you had this as the whole session or as part of your, were you? Oh, okay. So I was just going to say, besides the life wraps, would you be willing to share with us any more innovation?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we look at this as, for example, if we're staying on this topic of obstetric hemorrhage, I've mentioned misoprostol, and that is a drug which is really revolutionizing reproductive health. I mean, it's a very powerful drug that can cause the uterus to contract. So it's useful in a number of situations to prevent postpartum hemorrhage, to treat postpartum hemorrhage, and then also around issues around management of incomplete abortion or miscarriage, with bleeding for that, and then abortion as well. So that's one intervention. Magnesium sulfate for the prevention and treatment of eclampsia and management of severe pre-eclampsia, which is, again, probably, it depends on the setting. It can be either one of the second leading cause of maternal mortality globally. That is a very proven intervention, but it's difficult to administer. There are, it's difficult to get access to, and so we're having very innovative approaches about getting that drug to women in need, particularly loading dose in a peripheral setting. We also have, for the newborn, chlorhexidine for cord care. Basically, one of the major causes of newborn mortality. There are three major causes of newborn mortality globally. Basically, breathing problems, infection, and prematurity, of which breathing and prematurity are linked. So we have some newborn interventions. Chlorhexidine is applied to the umbilical cord to prevent infection, particularly in settings. I mean, women are not getting tetanus prophylaxis in pregnancy. And with unskilled attendance and birth, cord care is very important, and chlorhexidine has been shown to be a key intervention in that. These are really simple things, but it's the simple things that actually do get used and have the most potential. We have a UN Commission on Life-Saving Commodities and Supplies, and they've named these very key interventions. They've named misoprostol, the chlorhexidine for the newborn. They've also included family planning in that. And so these are a number of things that we're moving forward. For family planning, and especially also in the setting context of sexual violence, emergency contraception, a very effective intervention, very simple, very low cost, but not being broadly utilized. We consider this an innovation, but it's not only the actual drug or device in some settings, it's who can use it, who can do what, and how can we push this to the front line and get demedicalize things and really get them available for people who need to use them. So these are just a few examples. As far as the future, the pipeline, and again, I actually had it on some of my older slides, but pulled it. We have for something that's really exciting is this thing called the ODON device. And it's for assisted vaginal delivery. I mean, when you have have obstructed labor, basically you can have potentially an opportunity to use a vacuum or forceps if appropriate. I mean, these are all very, you have to go through the proper protocols. But there is a new device that was discovered by a Latin American, actually a car mechanic. This is a great story. And it's now it's in phase 1, but it's been shown very effective. And the story is, I believe it was Argentina, that this car mechanic was having a game in his garage, and when you put the cork in the wine bottle and it goes to the bottom and it gets stuck, and how do you get it out? And so they had this little contest, and he thought, well, why don't I put this plastic bag and try to pull it out that way using a plastic bag, and it worked. And he thought, well, why couldn't you use this for childbirth? And this guy was a really innovative thinker, and he happened to somehow move forward with this idea. And then actually my former supervisor at WHO, who's now a researcher on this, met him in Argentina and said, well, we could do some work around this. And they developed this device, and it went through now phase 1 trials and has been shown to be effective. And it's basically if this is going to take many years of research, but it's basically like a plastic bag that instead of applying forceps or a vacuum, or if you don't need to do a cesarean section, it's potentially going to be used. And now it's actually the patent is negotiated, and I believe it's going to be produced by a big pharma company. So we're at those discussions in that phase. Now, it would be years before that's available in the humanitarian context, but an example of something that went from an idea of somebody who's not even medical, and it just goes up through the system. It takes years, but it's really inspiring, and it shows that we all have a role to play in this. Sure.
I recently read, I think this was a couple of weeks ago, I recently read a couple of weeks ago, I think it was in, I've forgotten which magazine, that there was somebody who, and it really is not exactly that, but somebody came up with what they call the suitcase with the light, because of the problem in camps in underdeveloped countries where the electricity is always going out, that particularly in the case, obviously, of a birth, the lights shouldn't be going out. So what it was is some sort of a portable suitcase, and it's now being used it's quite cheap, and then now this is the kind of stuff which is, so basic, it seems to me, but it's so needed. Are there other kinds of things like that as well?
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, we have, again, it's not just the technologies. I mean, we have now things that we're putting into backpacks, light sources. I was involved with some of the solar power lighting, although those were bigger solar devices, not devices, but light sources. But yeah, I mean, all of these things have a role to play. A lot of it is around funding, to be quite honest, and the investment that is necessary to get into the mainstream. To go into a kit type of system, particularly UN kit type of system, you have to have a fairly standardized approach. You have to have, it has to be proven, it has to, again, be studied, evaluated, approved, and then you have to have a manufacturing process that follows UN standards. And I would say that other humanitarian agencies are, bringing things in, but it's really in the study context. And then again, it's who can do what. I mean, on the Thai-Burma border, they have a project that's using what we call backpack health workers, and moving blood donations. And so you have a number of innovative approaches that are context specific to address the needs. But with regards to what we're trying to focus on are the major causes of maternal mortality and the major kind of focused interventions, because it's around the time of childbirth that most of these deaths occur. It's you have about a 48-hour window, and you have that you can focus in on with your interventions, not only for the mother but also for the newborn, and then the stillbirth number I put up there. That is really quite striking. If you add those numbers up, it is quite a large number. And again, those are in estimates. They're not a true measurement. They're estimates. So if we can focus, our approach is really packages of interventions focused on a very specific window in time, and to save lives. As I said, it's combining who can do what and the actual intervention. With regards to the newborn, warming approaches, the tradition is kangaroo mother care, which is applying a premature infant to the mother's body for warmth. But we have other things that are also being evaluated. But do we have the evidence base? Do we have the funds to do that? One caution that I have is that yes, we have all these wonderful ideas, but if it's scattered, how we're going to lose our impact. And so that's the balance. You want to nurture and foster innovation, but at the same time, we need the basics. If I'm designing a project now with IFRC and UCSF, it's a few tablets, a measurement, or some way. It's not even actually a measurement, it's a local resource. Maybe it's a sanitary pad, something that women can use to assess the level of bleeding for intervention. It's then another, round of misoprostol, if it doesn't work, application of the non-pneumatic anti-shock garment, and then protocols for transfer to a higher level of care. These are incredibly basic things, and so while you want to talk about all of these, and one of the reasons I only talked about a few things during this talk was, if you make it broad, you're going to not be able to focus the resources as effectively and efficiently where they're needed right now. So that's one thing. I could have made an entire presentation on innovations, and that's what I get at when I go to WHO. They're pushing all these things on me, but let's just get the basics and do it well, and go big with it. The impact could be quite significant.
May I ask one question?
Sure, I'll defer and then yeah.
Paula Dappin, the AWC of Zurich. In regards to prevention, this is obviously so basic. I was wondering if you work together with the United Nations Population Fund to supply birth control and, of course, sexual and reproductive information. That's my first question. And the second part, conflict isn't just in areas of conflict. Every time a woman has to go to collect firewood or collect water, there's always that conflict situation. Do you have another agency in the UN that focuses on these type of issues so that women can try to protect themselves?
Thank you. That's an excellent question. And yes, we work very closely with UNFPA. In fact, actually a few years ago, we had a strategic partnership program with UNFPA specifically on family planning and other reproductive health issues, but really focusing on family planning. And I just contributed to a proposal that was presented last week at UNFPA for, I believe, a partnership that's going to go up until 2018. It hasn't been formalized, but yes, we work very closely with UNFPA. They are the commodities they are considered the reproductive health commodities expert and in the system, and we're on the steering committee together for the Interagency Working Group for Reproductive Health and Crises. With regards to the fuel and firewood, there are some really interesting things going on, and that's absolutely you've done your homework in this, because this is a huge issue for security in displaced settings. If the men venture outside of whatever that contained area is, and traditionally you think of it as a camp, but that's less the case, they will be killed. So they send the women out, often girls, and they're raped, they're beaten, they're killed, and so that was observed that that it's when they go out, they're unprotected, and very tragic things happen to them. And so an initiative was actually started by the Women's Refugee Commission called the Fuel and Firewood Initiative. And it specifically looked at, and also the environmental issues around this are quite important as well. They looked at, an alternative source of fuel and systems for cooking in these types of communities and settings that would be more protective. And it's an entire initiative, is the Fuel and Firewood Initiative. And then I recently I was in a meeting with the VP of JPIGO, which is a Johns Hopkins affiliate, and he mentioned that there is something else they're working on with regards to that whole fuel and cooking